So there's so many different ways in which you can talk about this part of non-duality. So you can talk about non-duality in regards to emptiness. You can call it emptiness. You can call it emptiness and fullness, everything and nothing. You can say the source is consciousness, or the source is existence, or isness, or amness. There's so many different ways in which it could be spoken about, and I don't actually have a particular way. I kind of change very often into different ways of talking about it. I don't see non-duality as an intellectual pursuit. It's about experiencing. It's about what's experiencing now, or who's experiencing now. And so it's spoken about in lots of different ways. And the way that I'm going to talk about it today is through consciousness and I amness. So the source of this life is consciousness, is looking, is experiencing. But it's not separate from everything. So often when you say consciousness, it sounds like it's conscious of an object, or it's something that is apart from everything else. The consciousness actually is the experiencing. It is what's happening. It is the walls, it is the room, it is the light, it is the computer, it is everything that's happening. So you could say consciousness is not a thing, but yet it's everything. But there's also another ingredient in there, and it's not just consciousness. This microphone electrocutes me a little bit. It has like a burning vibration, a little. Yeah, so you could say that consciousness is everything, but there's another quality in it that's not just what we'd describe as consciousness. It's also this sense of being alive, this sense of existence, and this isness, this sense of being, this sense of presence. And it's not that somebody's sensing it, it is everywhere. Like, I used to think that your sense of being, your I am, not I as a name, not I as a form, but that sense of I amness, that this is happening, I am, this is. I used to think that was for sure something that rose in the body, but that too actually is part of the consciousness and part of your essence, these two qualities, this sense of existence and this empty looking, and that's your true nature. And neither of them are a subject-object, so neither of them are something which actually exists separate from everything that's appearing. And they don't arise inside the body, they're the room, they're the plant, they're the tree, they're the other plant, they're the sofa, the glass windows, the balcony. It's everything. Everything that's appearing, the smells, the tastes, the space, the time, all of it. It is all of it. And traditionally, or the way I was taught, I don't know if it's traditionally, I mean, I say traditionally, but I think that's quite modern for Advaita actually. But the way that I was taught it was that it was almost like there were these four things. There was nothingness, consciousness, the body, I am, and everything. Okay, 5 things. So I was taught of it, there was nothing, consciousness, the body, I am, and everything. So nothing's at the back and everything's at the front. And actually, when you really get down to it, they all kind of squash into one. Sounds weird, but you separate it out. So originally, what might begin to happen in you is that you realize that there's something looking at the character. There's something that's looking at the person that you believe yourself to be. So that one that you believe yourself to be, the story inside your head that has feelings and thoughts and is moving through this world and is doing this and doing that and being there and going there, that is being experienced by something prior to it. That isn't actually the experiencer. There's something that knows that. So that person isn't knowing, that person is being known. Often we think it's the person that's knowing, we think the person's alive and the person's conscious, whereas actually there is something conscious of that. There's something that knows that. So something prior to that person. And that might be the first thing that you begin to come aware of, and you begin to see that this consciousness is separate from the person, that it's not actually part of the person. The person appears and disappears in the consciousness, and the consciousness is here, always here, this moment. It never leaves. And then you might become aware of your I am. So this sense that you are, prior to your name, form, to anything you know about yourself, not going into something like I am, but this sense that you're here, that you exist. I am. Woohoo! I am. So this sense of existence, that you are, I am. So you notice that these two things, the sense of this empty looking, and then the sense of I am, and they're always there, they're always present. Everything else changes. Your body changes, the world changes, things change, your emotions, your feelings, your ideas, your perceptions, everything changes, but those two qualities, they're always there. So initially you're taught that consciousness is prior to the body, and then there's the body, and then once the body arises, there is this sense of I am. And then that I am gets attached to the person and the consciousness. And that's a great way to teach it, but eventually it gets compressed. So the consciousness and the I am become one thing. A lot of teachers teach that nothingness is the source, and then consciousness is second, and the body, and then the I am, and then everything. Whereas I don't see it like that. I don't see nothing more the source than everything. Like I see it like the yin-yang sign, like the nothing and the everything are one and the same, and then the dot in each color. So eventually it gets squished together. So Nisargadatta Maharaj has this beautiful quote, I'm sure you've all heard it before, that he says, to know I'm everything is love, and to know I'm nothing is wisdom, and in between my life resides. So it's like they get squashed together, because you have to be looking through a body in order to experience this world. Like there has to be a machine or a character that's looked through. If you imagine like a film without a camera, a lens that was looking through, so you're just looking at the film from all angles, it would kind of be impossible to comprehend. The way that we do it is we have one body in experience that is being looked through. So if you have this film where it's been looked from the moon, the stars, the sun, the air, the person, the dog, it would be too much. You wouldn't be able to look at things in a way, it would cancel itself out, I presume. So if you so you always have to look from a position. So there always has to be a body in order for everything to arise. It doesn't necessarily have to be a human body, but there has to be something with the capacity to look through. And the nothing and the everything is the consistent, what's always here. The body will pass, and then another body will be looked through, and another body. But that passes, that comes and goes. But these two are always here. And it's not that consciousness is behind and the I am is front, and that consciousness is aware of the I am. That's what they often teach, is that consciousness knows the I am. As you get into the subtlety of it, you see that there isn't anything that knows the consciousness or the I am. They're here instantaneously, and they're one and the same thing. And it's that union that makes the awakening complete, like the nothingness, that one side of you is totally empty and not a thing, and then the other side is everything, and the everything is love. Like this is love. And it's when those two sit together that it's truly known who you are. And they sit together looking through this body-mind with all its particular filters and colours and variations. A good mood or bad mood, or happy or sexual or non-sexual. And the awakening to me is an energetic shift from being this body to being the nothing and the everythingness. So that which looks out isn't a thing, and it's not separate from things. So there's this deep knowing of wholeness. That doesn't mean that the body doesn't still have issues or karma. The body can. I see that for me, what happens after that realization is it integrates more and more. I think at the beginning I thought I had no karma or conditioning left, because it's so shocking, all of this stuff. And like it changed so much. But then as I began to interact with people, I realized I still had stuff and still had issues, and still needed to work on things. Like through time, I realize. And I think that's an endless process. Like, so there is that waking up, and then the body can endlessly expand into that love, that more and more. And I think it's something like on the human level, that it's like a collective thing. That the body can only evolve as much as its society does, to an extent. So, in answer to my question, which I have to look at again because I've forgotten it, is the source of life love or emptiness? To me, it's both. Some people will tell you that it's emptiness. And I can understand why they say that. Like it all comes from nothing, but you can never have nothing without everything. But to me, I prescribe to the Tao, or the yin and yang sign. I think that's the Tao Te Ching sign as well. I know it's Chinese, but there's both together. And I think the Buddhists have that perspective as well, that life is fullness and emptiness simultaneously. So what's the point? So I can imagine, like, you hear all this like intellectual stuff, like what's the point of doing all this? Like, why find all that stuff out if it isn't better for you, if it doesn't change you? I think along the process of discovering this subject, it does change you. Like you get reconditioned, and you have like less filters and perspectives and judgments onto this life. So I think it does change you through the process of getting to know non-duality, but the actual awakening doesn't change you. The actual awakening is beyond you. And your body's still going to run off its particular karma or conditioning. It's not suddenly going to be a Japanese person doing tea ceremonies. It's going to be English or French or German or American, whatever it is. And it's going to have that particular conditioning. And you'll most probably still get angry when the car doesn't start, or the children are screaming at you, or your partner keeps being passive aggressive, or whatever it is. Those things don't necessarily change that much, but they can do, like in that shift. But normally through being in contact with this subject, you begin to recondition yourself. And I think that it should be every human's number one responsibility to attempt to recondition themselves. It's only fair to others around you to attempt to recondition yourself. Like humans, you know, they can be a bit of a funky animal. I don't know if you've noticed. It's having that openness. I just loved it when I was in India this year. I've said this so many times on the stream. This sadhu said to me and my partner, like, knowledge is infinite. I thought that was so beautiful. And it's the same for everything. It's just our intelligence can expand endlessly, and your conditions and way of being can expand endlessly, your behavior can expand endlessly. To me, there's no full stop there in the behavioral world. But the reason why to get into it for you, on the human level, the process of all of this, of unpicking what you think and what you believe, can have a profound effect and can change the person to an extent. But on a deeper level, it's total contentment. It's feeling at home again. But that's not something for the person. That just sounds impossible to the person. It's like, what? How can that not be? I want to be at home. The person is always something that's coming and going and doesn't fundamentally exist. So the person can never actually be still and be at home, because the person is ideas and thoughts and impulses and chemical reactions arising right here, but it's not a solid thing. There isn't a solid you inside that body that has like a soul and a separate entity. Like the appearance of you and the appearance of choice are all chemical reactions happening within this body, and neural pathways and electricity, I don't know how these impulses, I don't know how you say it, are firing up, giving the appearance of someone with free will, giving the appearance of someone with choice, and giving the appearance of somebody with a life. But this is only stories and thoughts. If you bump your head and you completely forget all your past, you have no idea who you are, but that there's still that essence, there's still that feeling of I am an empty looking. You still feel like yourself, but yet you know nothing about what you have been. The same when you were a baby, it was the same essence, but you didn't know that you were successful or rich or happy or unhappy, you just were. And when you're having a really good time, you completely forget about yourself. The idea that you are somebody that wakes up, or you are somebody that gets this, is a complete fabrication. There isn't somebody, there isn't a solid somebody that wakes up. There can be, you can have behaviors that over time become, you could say, more enlightened. Don't use that word because it just sounds too religious, but becomes more expanded and in line with love. But that's not what a waking up is to me. A waking up is this shift from being limited to not being limited. It's totally energetical, and it's not about behavior, it's not about conditioning, it's a collapse into what you are. You could say that that's the end of seeking to an extent, like an end of seeking for your home, but it doesn't mean that your body doesn't have conditioned seeking patterns that go on. So if you before were a person that enjoyed having love affairs, that most probably will still go on. And maybe it came from like a seeking pattern because you didn't get enough attention from your mother or father as a child. And that habit could still be there and have that flavor of seeking. But it's not, there's like a cut off from it. So that's the only thing that I would say that is the point, is this energetic shift. And for some people it's a gradual shift, even though ultimately it can't be gradual. But for some people it's an appearance of a gradual shift. And for some it's sudden, it's instantaneous. So sometimes you just kind of like fade out from being identified with the person. Maybe you don't even really notice it's happening. I mean, how would you? And it's not a state, it's not a feeling, it's not a behavior, it's not a way of being. It's this shift from being like that to expanded. Who you are is everywhere and everything. Okay, I've run out of things to say already today. So let's go to some questions.